He's the author of the new book entitled Philly Special, the inside story of how the Philadelphia Eagles won their first Super Bowl championship. We just went through all of the chapters, and he joins us now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Sal, welcome back. How you been, pal?
Oh, Mike, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it, and I am truly humbled by the success of the book. I really am. Not surprised, given how important and how big that Super Bowl championship was, but to write a book and then have people embrace it like this is really, truly humbling.
Yeah, and I know that obviously this area was starving for a championship. So like you just said, not surprised about how much people want to consume stuff here. But the stories in this book, I think you really go in depth and inside to give people different views of how this whole season, this unexpected season went.
Well, that was what I was trying to do is, it's very difficult to write a book about something that everybody thinks they know everything about. And so what you try to do is crack the code, try to find out something that people don't know about in each and every chapter. And the simple way to do it, the simple approach is the way that I did it, which is take it week by week and unearth something new and dynamic about that week as it transpired. And a lot of work went into it, obviously, but I didn't write the book for me. I wrote it for the fans and my friends and my family who have suffered with this team for so long and supported me for 25 years covering the team. A lot of sacrifice goes on. You miss a lot of Sunday night meals with your family, a lot of Saturday nights you're not home when you're on the road with the team. So, it has my name on it, but the book is really dedicated to them.
Sal, you mentioned in the book, there's a lot of exclusive interviews with some pretty important people inside this organization. Who are some of the people that you found very interesting talking to about this special season?
Yeah, well, Doug Pederson, for sure, is number one. And the more and more I think about it, and then you watch Nick Foles last night, you're just astonished that Doug Pederson won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. It's quite amazing what he pulled off. Really is.
Yeah, and you mentioned about Foles, and you offer we just went through all the different chapters. I was asking Pete, which chapter seems
Lurie's
to be
Lament.
Lurie's Lament.
That's
was
the one that caught my ear the most.
Yeah, but we went through a lot of the different chapters here, and you talk about how Doug really overcame the loss of Wentz and kind of embraced this role.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of critical chapters in the book, but the behind-the-scenes story about how Wentz was hurt in Los Angeles and how the team regathered itself around the head coach and around the speech that Malcolm Jenkins made in that locker room after Pederson spoke to the team was astonishing, really. And I got to tell you, that part of it is really inspiring. If you read any part of the book, that's without a doubt the number one area to look at, because it's not like anything else any other team in Super Bowl history has ever gone through. You go on the road to California, to Seattle, lose in Seattle, stay out there a week, lose the starting quarterback, win the division title on the same day, and then have to save the season in 4 weeks and turn around and beat Atlanta as an underdog, and then the Vikings as underdogs, and then the Patriots in the Super Bowl. There's so many interesting tidbits that I unearthed. One of them that's really fascinating to me is, and I talked to Doug about this today because he was up at Get Up doing some interviews, is, when they were practicing Philly Special and they assigned Trey Burton as the quarterback to throw the ball, he was throwing it so hard and over the head of Nick Foles that Foles couldn't catch it. And they practiced it literally dozens of times. And Pederson stopped practice, blew the whistle, and went over to him and said, listen, just lob it like a grenade. Don't throw it like a heat-seeking missile. And it's quite astonishing that they pulled that play off, especially in the Super Bowl on 4th down.
That's an interesting insight there. And as you
great.
mentioned, one of the parts about the book here is one of the questions that gets answered here. Sal Paolantonio is our guest. Philly Special, the inside story of how the Philadelphia Eagles won their first Super Bowl championship is what really happened in that locker room. And you talk about Malcolm Jenkins, but the fact that Pederson had to really, implement a lot of new things on the fly to help Nick Foles out, it seemed like.
Save the quarterback and save the season, Mike. And it wasn't a straight line thing. They put in the run pass options, and they weren't really working. And then there's a moment where Pederson just goes off on the team at halftime against the Oakland Raiders on Christmas night, and just lays into him and basically says he lost his mind with the team. And this is on the doorstep of going to the postseason with the number 1 seed in the NFC. So it was fascinating to me how this all took place, in real time with all the losses that they had at so many key positions. And my conclusion overall is I don't think Pederson gets enough credit for winning this Super Bowl. I mean, a lot of it goes to Carson, obviously. A lot of it goes to Nick, and they both played heroic roles at important times. But there was one guy that kept it all together. And to me, he's the central character in the story, and that's Doug.
Yeah, it seems that Doug is kind of now going into his 3rd year, kind of becoming, thought of. And by the way, the book is an Amazon bestseller. It's the number 1 football book, number 1 Philadelphia book, number 1 in the Mid-Atlantic region. Amazon.com. It's Philly Special. Sal Paolantonio is the author. He's with us here. And Doug is in just his 3rd season. You don't see this, Sal, that many times where a guy this early in his career is already so becoming so highly regarded.
Well, now he's got that 5-year extension with the team, and they had to lock him up because he would have been pretty sought after. I mean, in my view, Mike, Pederson is the best young coach in the league and should have been Coach of the Year last year. I don't know how in the world Sean McVay walked away with that title, but he goes out there and he beats Sean McVay with the backup quarterback in the 4th quarter. I mean, come on. So I think he would have been a highly sought-after commodity. And it's the Belichick-Brady model. They hope to duplicate it with Pederson and Wentz. And, I think they can if they really tread lightly with Carson Wentz over the next 2 weeks. And I had a conversation with Doug Pederson today in New York about it. And I said, you're the CEO of the team. I said, don't you want to basically say, listen, in the end, this is my call? And he said, absolutely not. No way. He said, this is too important for the future of this team. I've got to leave it in the hands of the doctors. And, that in and of itself shows a level of leadership and maturity in the position that's astonishing to me.
Sal, you were the only reporter allowed in the hotel at the Super Bowl. You're the only guy to ride with him during the game. We talked about that last year here on Sal Pal Fridays. You got so much behind-the-scene access, West Coast, East Coast, one-on-ones. How much have you seen from all your, behind-the-scenes interactions? How much have you seen him evolve as a coach?
Well, one of the things that I try to show in the book was that the evolution of Doug Pederson as a leader was forged through fire, Mike. Every time he came across a major crisis in the team, he was able to regather himself and his football team, but also learn how to rely on his veteran leadership. one of the things he said to me that I put in the book was, a lot of coaches don't listen to their players. I do. And that took him some time to do that. He didn't come in and do that right away, but he had certain players, Malcolm Jenkins, of course, with that famous speech. And, there's no profanity in the book until I get to that speech. I just felt like, Mike, that I needed to keep it real there and really capture Malcolm Jenkins' message to the team. So the whole speech is in there, all the profanity. And Malcolm Jenkins is one of those guys who he really leaned on. But he leaned on Chris Long, and he leaned on a lot on LeGarrette Blount. Blount and Long, as you see through the book, really brought the Patriot way to the team. There's lots of scenes in the book where Long and Blount play a major role. And I'm surprised they didn't keep Blount. I really am. That to me was the biggest loss of the offseason. It wouldn't have taken much to keep him. That guy had 173 carries last year. Where is this team making up 173 carries? I asked you that, Mike.
Well,
by the way, is Sal Pal Fridays coming back to the Mike Gill Show?
Sal Pal Fridays will be back with our great friends at Dunkin' Donuts. Yes, they will be back for the beginning of the season. That first Friday, we'll be recapping the Eagles and the Falcons.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. 3 o'clock every Friday, Dunkin' Donuts. I'll be there, baby. I'm ready.
That's right. You mentioned them not bringing Blount back, and one of the highlights of this book is what to expect as the team looks to build on its success. What we saw last night doesn't have people very confident that they're going to be able to build off of last season.
No, you can tell Foles is pressing. You can just tell. I mean, that second interception, even Aikman was dumbfounded. He wasn't really criticizing. He didn't want to criticize the Super Bowl MVP. You could tell he was going very touchy-feely on Nick Foles throughout the night. But that last one to Jamie Collins in the red zone was, I'm sorry, that was too easy to see and prevent. And Nick Foles just looks like he's pressing.
A couple more real quick with Sal. Just nothing that we see from Foles makes them rethink the timeline for Wentz. That's evident, though, correct?
Correct. I pressed Doug Pederson on that very subject today on the Get Up show with Mike Greenberg and Michelle Beadle and Marcus Spears. I said to him, listen, if Foles continues like this in the next 2 weeks, do you press the accelerator down on bringing Wentz back? And he said, absolutely not, no way. Once again, reiterating that it's the doctor's timeline only that matters here.
Hey, I saw yesterday your sit-down with Kirk Cousins, and I'm just interested. That was the team that was one game away from the Super Bowl and making a change at quarterback. What did you learn from Kirk, leaving Washington, heading to Minnesota, and the expectations for that Vikings team now with Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, well, what my biggest question to him, Mike, was, why did you do this to yourself? You went to a 13-3 team, and you got $85 million guaranteed. I can't come up with a formula that has more pressure than that.
That's a good point.
I mean, come on. Yeah. When was the last time? I can't even remember that a team in the NFC North went back-to-back 13-win seasons. I don't even think the Packers with Aaron Rodgers ever did that.
No, not at all.
I mean, I'd have to look that up. I'll get the guys at ESPN Stats and Information to look that up. But, geez, I don't know how he duplicates that level of success. They are loaded defensively, but the last time I looked, the Eagles dropped 38 points on them, so there's that.
Last one, I saw you talking this morning about Baker Mayfield, and we saw him last night get a couple of first-team snaps, and, interested to get your take on Baker Mayfield with Cleveland and this Browns team that is very intriguing.
It is. So here's the 2 points I'd like to make on Baker Mayfield. One, I had him number one on my draft board. I think he was the best equipped to come in and play at the NFL level, highly competitive and productive. But what I saw last night was a guy who didn't want to throw interceptions. I saw him holding on to the ball way too long, and I saw a guy who doesn't understand that there's open and then there's NFL open.
Yep.
And you better start pulling the trigger on some of this stuff. Now, he may be worried about throwing interceptions because he doesn't want to fall behind Tyrod Taylor any more than he is. Maybe he's second-guessing himself, but he was holding on to the ball way too long, Mike.
Sal Paolantonio, the book is Philly Special, the inside story of how the Eagles won their first Super Bowl championship. We just touched on a couple of nuggets from the book, some highlights. Check it out at Amazon. It is #1 in football, Philadelphia, Mid-Atlantic, Amazon.com. It is a best-selling book from Sal Paolantonio, who will again be a part of the Sports Bash for Sal Pal Fridays each and every Friday. But he was kind enough to jump on board, as we know, a little summer reading. That last week of the beach, you need this book in your hand to get you ready for the Eagles season. Sal, we always appreciate catching up with you, and we look forward to another edition of Sal Pal Friday this year.
Mike, you do a great job. Your show is great. I hear lots of great feedback every time I'm on your show. My friends down all along the shore, it doesn't matter where they are, they pick you up and love your show, and they love Sal Pal Fridays, and I can't wait to come back.
Thank you, Sal. Appreciate it.
Okay, boss.